Are good leaders born, or are they made? What we know is that it takes all kinds of experiences to lead, especially in the social sector. Welcome to The Ripple Effect. I'm Caroline Broadhurst, Deputy Chief Exec at the Rank Foundation. In this series, I'll be speaking with leaders from across the UK, learning what led them to work in the social sector and what shaped them into the inspiring leaders they are today. Sometimes leadership lands in your lap. In this episode, I'm talking to Clare Morgans, the founder and chief exec of YKids children's charity. YKids run amazing after-school clubs and activities for children and young people in Liverpool. They also support the families of those children with a community pantry, among many other things. In this episode, Clare talks about how Christianity led her to youth work, despite not really liking kids at the time. We also talk about valuing neurodiversity and the different types of leadership, including Clare's own style. First, here's how it all started for Clare.
I didn't actually like children. I'd been quite badly bullied in school, and children were bullies and they were horrible. But actually at 15 I became a Christian, and at 18 I went off to a Bible college for a year. And one of my friends, she led a team doing children's holiday clubs. And I absolutely loved those, not so much because I liked children at the time, but because I loved dressing up and drama and puppets and messy games and all the things that go with it. But I began to fall in love with children through that process of having to be on these teams and learning about children's work. So it was more of a gradual process. When I became a Christian, first prayer I asked God for was a boyfriend. I was 15.
Fair enough.
I even gave him, I want him to have blonde hair and wear light-coloured clothing. I mean, I was into men in white trousers, don't ask. I was 15. And this lad started coming along to my church. He fit my description, and so I stalked him. And he went off to do children's work at a big Christian conference. So I went. And I thought that gave me an opportunity to spend time with him. Didn't see him the whole week. And the conference we were helping at, we were working with 5 to 7-year-olds, and there were about 400 of them. And I was given a group of 10 for me, and it's like, I don't know what to do. But they talked us through it. And at one point they said, ask the children what they'd like to pray about. And I asked them, and this little 7-year-old girl said, can we pray for my 4-year-old brother? He doesn't want to go and see yellow granddad anymore. And it turned out that her granddad was dying of liver cancer, and he turned yellow and his eyes were yellow and everything. It frightened this 4-year-old boy. And for me, that was my epiphany moment when I realised that children weren't the monsters I thought they were, but actually they were real people who life happened to, and everything that happened to adults also happened to children. And I realised that actually I wanted to help children, support them through life, through those difficult situations.
You became a Christian at quite a young age yourself, at 15.
I did.
Can you tell us a bit about how your faith has played out in helping you come to terms with your own childhood as well?
Yeah, sure. So for me, most children rebel at some point in their life. My rebellion was to go to church, and I had big rows with my parents about it. And I think there was an awful lot of, you call them ACEs now, adverse childhood experiences in my childhood. And when I became a Christian for the first time in my life, I felt loved, and that God loved me, and that gave me a platform. Love gives you a platform to move from. And so for me, I wanted children to know that they were loved. I wanted children to know that they were valued and they were special. And I wanted children to have positive role models in their lives. And if for them it was coming to faith like I had, fantastic. But if that wasn't what they chose, then okay, I was still going to love them and support them and be there. And that was really the basis of where I started YKids.
So tell us a bit about YKids. Who are you? What you do?
We are a children, young people and family charity. We did start just doing children's work, but children grew up, became teenagers, and we started to do teenage work. And then we found we were working with teenagers and sending them back into dysfunctional homes. So we started working with their parents and working with the whole family unit. When I started working in Liverpool, I fell in love with Bootle, and there'd been 3 child murders by children within 5 years before then. And local people said, we need something here. I was tired of people coming from really wealthy churches or from wealthy areas saying, this is how you do it, with all their nice middle-class children and knew how to behave. And I thought, no, what I want to see is how do you do children's work with children who are in dire circumstances with no resources, and know how can we work with those? So we began working with local schools, just saying, what do you need? And so I started working with kids who were very good at maths. There were 7 and I ain't got a clue. They were way better than me. They had to move me on to something else. But just trying to help schools and see what they needed. And then we did a carnival costumes project. And we brought children together from the community to create big costumes to march in the Lord Mayor's parade. And I remember going for some funding and we were turned down. And we found another bit of funding, and then we brought in these professionals, artists, to help us. And then 2 weeks before the event, they pulled out saying the children's work was substandard. So this was my first big thing in Bootle, and I was like, oh my God. But after a nervous breakdown and a lot of tears, I phoned everyone I knew, all the parents, my own family, my friends, and everyone piled in. And within 2 weeks, we had transformed the work and created the most beautiful costumes. And we marched in the Lord Mayor's parade and won best costumes. From the company, they gave us a prize. The company had turned us down for funding, which was hilarious. And that was our first community project. And then I stopped work as a community worker and sort of took a massive leap of faith to start YKids as a charity. And our first office we were given was actually a ladies' toilet in this church. I mean, the toilet wasn't there anymore, but it was a bit of a manky, mouldy room. And then before too long, we were offered a room upstairs in the church hall, which was huge. So what we currently do is we run sort of 10 after-school projects for children aged 5 to 18. We run family support work, Calm and Create, which is about well-being for parents. So it's during the school day when kids are at school. We do lots of schools work, book clubs, community events. We also run an event called the Believe Awards, which is a regional event celebrating children who are unsung heroes. And then we also have a Victorian Explorer children's bookshop, which is a steampunk theme, and that is really magical. It's called Kingsley & Co. And we also run the Bootle Children's Literary Festival. It's a regional event, but we call it Bootle because Bootle needs to get put on the map with the positive things. Bootle's in sort of 6%, lowest for literacy. So we wanted to make a difference and help children to get help support schools. But we're not teaching children to read. We're teaching children to get excited about stories so they become self-teachers and engage with books. It's education by stealth.
So that love of reading and that conduit for young people, it comes across really, really strongly. Can you tell us about why working on the Children's Literature Festival is so important to you?
Sure. One, I'm a creative and I love doing mad stuff. And I'm a firm believer that you find the things that excite people and then you run with it. And if we can excite children to read, that'll improve their future. So our last literary festival was Fairy Tale, Myth and Legend. And we had dragons and Vikings and a medieval fair and all sorts of crazy stuff. And we asked children to write a book with short stories and we published that. So these young people, we had, I think it was 28 young people Their stories were published in a book, and then they came to a book launch and they saw their book beautifully put together. They're now published authors. And then we did a book signing. We had Frank Cottrell-Boyce there, and he signed everyone's books, but they were getting their book signed, but their story. So they were treated on a level pegging with a mega star like Frank Cottrell-Boyce.
Lovely. I like it. And tell me about YKids. How did you come about the name?
Sure. So everyone talks about Generation X now. Well, Generation X are the children of Generation Y. And when we started YKids, that's who they were. I'm old. That's the problem. So it's actually the sociology term, the Y generation.
I want to talk a little bit about leadership, social sector leadership.
Sure.
And can I ask you, when did you discover that you could be a good leader?
I sort of fell into leadership when everyone else bowed out. So I remember the first holiday club event I led at a big conference. I was a helper, and then the leader dropped out and just landed it in my lap. And I was like, I made so many mistakes and learnt so many things that first time, but it was by accident or because other people. It's, you know, the common adage where there's a line of people and said, who's going to volunteer? And everyone steps back. And I was left there. And that's how it began. But more and more, I've stepped into that role in different ways. But I think it's very much about, not because I want to be a leader, because I see there's a need and no one else is doing it. So I'm all right, then I'll do it.
And you wear so many different hats. How do you adapt your leadership style in all those different roles?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's about finding what works for what role. And I've really enjoyed sort of over the years studying different leadership types and how to manage people and how to get the best out of them and things like that. So you can use the wrong leadership style in the wrong situation with the wrong person. So it's very much a learning process and you don't always get it right. Very aware that not everybody works the same way and not everybody's brain works at the speed my brain works. And I have to think about the diversity of who people are. And again, lean into their skills. So some people are very methodical and will get things done. I think about my team. I know there's people who don't like change and that really upsets them. So I know when I manage them, I have to warn them, encourage them that it is going to be this way, but it's going to be okay. And just help them through that. Other people love change. Yep, what we're doing next, no problem. And then also things like half my team have ADHD and the other half have got dyslexia. So I have to make sure everything is red and double red, because the spelling can be all over the place and we have to make sure that we're looking after each other. But also valuing the neurodiversity in my team because it's their superpowers. It really is. I've got one person who has Asperger's and I wouldn't be without them. They're just attention to detail is amazing. But also being aware that sometimes it winds each other up. But let's think about it, talk it through and understand each other. So one of the things we do every year as a team is we actually go away for sort of like a 24-hour period where we spend a day doing silly things and getting to know each other, and then we do a day training and we stay in a hotel. Rank gave us that idea. A nice hotel. It really works. And we literally get 6 months of team building, getting to know each other out of the way in 24 hours. And it's so good for the team and helping us to understand each other. And we always do something around, how we think and how we work and how to get the best out of each other.
How do you inspire your team to work to their own strengths?
I think it's about giving them opportunity. So I firmly believe that to get the best out of people, then they need to feel happy and valued and have some autonomy in their own role. Obviously within boundaries, but you make those boundaries bigger. So an example would be we've got a wonderful administrator. and her job is administrator, but she loves children's work. So she actually leads our 5 to 7 children's work. Because I know that giving her that, it gives her the creative outlet. She loves doing that, which then, fills her with the joy to carry on doing the other things.
And so how would you describe yourself, and maybe how would your team describe your leadership style?
I don't know, really. I think I'm probably transformative in the sense that you transform to mould to the situation and what's best for that situation. I remember some years ago, we actually did some training with the Rank Foundation on insights and the colours. Mm-hmm. The insights training was to enable people to understand themselves and their leadership styles better. And it consisted, you could have a whole wheel of 36 colours, but there were 4 main sort of leadership types. The red being the autocratic style. This is the way we're going, and we're all going to do it. The yellow was a bit more creative and bigger picture and being a bit more out there. The greens were very much the people who really care and make sure everybody was on board. And then the blues were the people who were very much about who, what, why, where, how. So we did all of that, and we looked at our own colours and the colour wheel and what we thought we were. But it was like their perception of me was quite different to my perception of me. And I thought that was a really interesting exercise. But I would hope that people feel listened to, people feel some autonomy in what they're able to do, and that their ideas are valued and they're able to act on them. That would be my hope, yeah.
And how would you define inclusive leadership?
I think everyone can lead, but not everyone can lead in the same way. And some people are never going to be the big upfront person, but there are so many different styles of leadership. So it's about helping all people to discover their gifts and their skills and the best way for them to lead. And if their way of leading is just getting alongside someone and befriending them, and they're brilliant at that, then giving them the opportunity to do that more and really enhance their skills and value their skills. I think for me, it's about all people finding what works for them and how they can lead and be valued, whoever they are, wherever they're from. I try not to put people in boxes as well.
Okay.
To say, let's not say you're this, you're that. You're a beautiful person, and how can we value you and love you and enable you to be more? One of the things I did learn about leadership, and I learned about myself, was I got invited to go on to a course for entrepreneurs to learn new things. And I thought, yeah, I'm always up for learning more. And while I was doing this course, I realised that not only was every person on this course a man, but every single training that was delivered, they were like online little courses that you went on, was delivered by a man. And virtually all of them were younger than me and less experienced than me. And I got a bit, hang on a minute. So I actually contacted the leaders of the course and said, why are there no women on this course? And the response I got was, oh, do you want to join a women's group? And I wanted to punch him because that wasn't what I was saying. And it made me reflect, and I realised actually it's not necessarily their fault. But as women, we work and work and work, and we think, well, I'm not the expert in that, so I'm not going to say anything. Whereas a man will do a course and go, I'm the expert now, and I'll do it. Now, I know that's a broad generalisation, but it's something I found out a lot, that as women, we can often put ourselves down more, as men are more confident and put themselves forward. And even I was chatting to my husband the other day because I was listening to a podcast, and the woman on this podcast was talking about playing chicken with men. And I'm thinking, I do that. And you're walking down the street, and as a woman, you step out of the way when the man's coming forward, and the men just keep going. And so this woman on the podcast was saying, I don't. And she said, and I get shoulder barged, but I'm going to keep going. And I thought, yeah, and it just made me think that I'm not blaming men and I'm not anti-men, but actually women, we can be our own worst enemies sometimes, but actually maybe we should have more confidence in our skills and abilities and stop putting ourselves down and step forward and say, no, I can do that.
And if you had a magic wand, what would you like to see more of in the social sector, especially for young people and for children?
Oh my goodness, so much more investment. It feels like it's just been stripped. More opportunities for young people, for places for them to have those structures around them and community around them that actually helps them. So many of our young people got major mental health problems now. And where do they go? Where do they turn? And all our services are just crippled under the weight of the problems. So I would love, if I had a magic wand, I'd be making sure there's, 3 or 4 more big youth centres in every town with skilled quality youth workers and support workers and support services. With your own children, you give them so many boundaries and they push against them. And then when they're ready, you let them out a bit. And I think our society's just sort of said to kids, off you go, do what you like. And they're not coping well. They're really not. So those, essentially, it's just getting more positive opportunities and support into kids' lives. And that means investment. But you know what? It pays off. It pays off in the long term. And we're now paying the consequences of, without being political, of investment being stripped out of youth services, some years ago. So actually, if we start investing again, give us 10 years and we'll start reaping the benefits.
Thanks for listening to The Ripple Effect, brought to you by the Rank Foundation and Purposeful Marketing. This episode featured Clare Morgans, CEO of YKids. The producers were Cass Denton, alongside Michaela Carmichael and James Shield, courtesy of the Feast Collective. Tune into The Ripple Effect